Democrats are turning up the heat on William P. Barr, accusing the Attorney General of trying to influence the November presidential election and threatening impeachment after he gave a fiery speech last week lambasting career federal prosecutors. The chairs of 4 House committees urged the Justice Department's internal watchdog to open an emergency investigation into whether Barr is using United States Attorney John Durham's Russia probe as part of an effort to taint the presidential election. In a letter Friday to Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz, the 4 lawmakers said Mr. Barr's comments and actions could be damaging to public confidence in the integrity of the DOJ and our democratic process. The lawmakers wrote, Attorney General Barr has signaled repeatedly that he is likely to allow DOJ to take prosecutorial actions, make public disclosures, and even issue reports before the presidential election in November. Such actions clearly appear intended to benefit President Trump politically. The letter arrived the same day Representative Steve Cohen authored a scathing op-ed calling for Mr. Barr's impeachment, and a day after Democratic senators pleaded for Mr. Horowitz to intervene. A Justice Department spokeswoman and a spokeswoman for the Inspector General's office declined to comment. Democrats were rankled by Mr. Barr's speech marking Constitution Day last week at Hillsdale College, a school with conservative ties. Mr. Barr accused his Justice Department prosecutors of acting as headhunters. He also compared them to preschoolers, decried them as part of the permanent bureaucracy, and suggested they should be reined in by politically appointed leaders. The next day, the Democrats launched a 3-pronged assault on Mr. Barr. They targeted the Durham probe in particular. The Durham probe has been digging into the origins of the Russia collusion probe since May 2019 and veered into a criminal investigation 5 months later. Democrats now worry that Mr. Durham's team is cooking up an October surprise for the presidential race. Mr. Barr's political opponents say his public comments about the investigation could violate Justice Department policy if Mr. Durham releases a report or brings indictment within 60 days of Election Day. Mr. Barr in 2018 authored a report saying politically charged prosecutorial and law enforcement actions must be avoided within 60 to 90 days of Election Day, but Democrats contend Mr. Barr has changed his mind. They cite an interview the Attorney General had earlier this year with conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt. He said in the interview, "You don't indict candidates or perhaps someone that's sufficiently close to a candidate, that it's essentially the same, within a certain number of days before an election. But as I say, I don't think any of the people whose actions are under review by Durham fall into that category." Democrats fear Mr. Barr will try to skirt Justice Department rules by having Mr. Durham issue a report instead of filing criminal charges. The Democrats wrote, "With potentially devastating consequences for our democracy, Attorney General Barr appears to have changed his position and no longer supports the long-standing DOJ policy of refraining from taking overt actions or disclosures in the run-up to an election if there is a possibility the action could impact the election." They also asked the Inspector General to review Mr. Durham's legal authority to issue a report about a subject who has not been charged in a federal court. That challenge is likely to fail given that Special Counsel Robert Mueller's lengthy report touched on several subjects who had not been charged. Also on Friday, Representative Steve Cohen called on Congress to launch an impeachment inquiry into Mr. Barr. Mr. Cohen said the Attorney General is conducting a politically motivated assault on the rule of law, the norms of procedural due process, and our election systems. He wrote in the opinion piece published by The Hill, "That is why I have attempted to address these concerns by introducing Res. 1032, calling for an inquiry into whether Barr should be impeached. Some people counsel patience, but I'm reminded of what wise men have always known. If we do not stand up to injustice, our silent indifference will condemn us." China could have prevented 2/3 of its corona cases before the end of February had it followed international health guidelines at the beginning of the outbreak in Wuhan, a new congressional report concluded. The report, released Monday and authored by Republican members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, echoes earlier findings that China made efforts to cover up the severity of the initial spread of the virus and that the government harassed and detained journalists, scientists and health care professionals who were voicing concerns about its handling of the outbreak. The report said, It is beyond doubt that the Chinese Communist Party actively engaged in a cover-up designed to obfuscate data, hide relevant public health information, and suppress doctors and journalists who attempted to warn the world. Research shows the CCP could have reduced the number of cases in China by up to 95% had it fulfilled its obligations under international law and responded to the outbreak in a manner consistent with best practices. The report also said that the Chinese government was legally obliged, on December 27, to inform the World Health Organization that the outbreak in Wuhan may constitute a public health emergency of international concern. World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus declared the coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency of international concern on January 30. The report's conclusions take aim at the World Health Organization, from which President Trump announced a United States withdrawal in May, and said that the United Nations-backed organization was heavily influenced by the Chinese Communist Party in its messaging of the outbreak. According to the report, citing outside experts, the World Health Organization has been complicit in the spread and normalization of CCP propaganda and disinformation. By repeating as truth statements that were misleading, if not lies, the World Health Organization negatively impacted the global response. Representative Michael McCaul, Texas Republican and ranking member of the Democrat-led committee, said in a statement Monday that, "It is crystal clear that had the CCP been transparent, and had the head of the World Health Organization cared more about global health than appeasing the CCP, lives could have been spared and widespread economic devastation could have been mitigated." There have been over 31 million reported cases of corona, according to the Johns Hopkins University tracker. The global population currently stands at 7.8 billion. The Arkansas Republican, Senator Tom Cotton, said, "Some Democrats ultimately could support President Trump's nominee to replace the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died on Friday of pancreatic cancer." Mr. Cotton said on Fox News Sunday, "As Mitch McConnell has said, there will be a vote. And I don't think that we should discount Democratic votes, either." Mr. Cotton pointed out that Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, the only Democratic senator who voted to confirm Justice Brett Kavanaugh in October 2018, was re-elected. The Arkansas senator said there was a referendum on the issue of Supreme Court nominees in the 2018 midterms. Mr. Cotton said, "There could not have been a clearer mandate because the American people didn't just re-elect Republicans, they expanded our majority. So we have a clear mandate to perform our constitutional duty. That's what the Senate majority will do now. That's what we did back in 2016 as well." Mr. Cotton pointed out that 4 Democratic senators who voted against Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation lost re-election the next month. Those former senators are Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Claire McCaskill of Missouri and Bill Nelson of Florida. Democratic Senators Doug Jones and Gary Peters, who are facing tough re-election bids this year, also voted against Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation.